Hello, so I'm going to help you guys to see how to make selection paintings for thumbnails using only the selection tools, dumping, and gradients in Photoshop. We're using Photoshop 2020 and then moving on to thumbnails later so you can see the process moves further. And I also have my benchmarks here where I am looking at paths moving through, really lyrical shapes, cars that are tilting in a big chase scene, and big lyrical trees, fun shapes. That's really kind of what I'm going for. Also a house that is very tall, floating rock kind of a thing. So that's my ideas that I'm working with as I'm creating my pieces. This one has a Fibonacci sequence over top of it, and this one has the rule of thirds, which are quickly sketched over top. Another Fibonacci sequence, which is the round kind of rule of thirds as well, but we're also kind of hugging the composition, framing the composition in that piece. Here you can see my perspective brushes are being used. So I'm going to create a piece with you guys as if we're doing it from scratch. This is what we're going to get, but I'm going to start a new one again. So File, New in Photoshop. And on this top bar, it says Film and Video here, and we're going to use the HDTV 1080, 1920 by 1080 pixels. I'm going to hit Create. And that gives me the guides and everything, which I can see for the safe guides. I'm going to hit F for full screen, and then I'm going to hit the space bar so I can move these things around freely. All right, we start off with a background, which is locked. I have my layers open. I would like for you guys to be in the painting workspace. So you go to Window and Workspace and Painting. And that will bring up your layers. Layers will be kind of in this little section. So you can pull those out if you want, or keep it kind of hidden there. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to hit L for lasso. The first lasso I want you guys to learn is if you hover over the cowboy-shaped lasso, I want you to go to the polygon lasso. That polygon lasso will allow me to make kind of the hugging the composition shape. I always want to see outside of that white, and I'm going to double-click really fast right next to it. I need to click outside of that in order to get those points to connect, and my selection had to connect by double-clicking. That helps it to connect. Now I'm going to hit G. That gets me into this area. G has the gradient tool or the paint bucket. My paint bucket's hiding behind that. If you don't see your paint bucket, you're going to click on those three bars, and you might have some and you might need to drag it in, but I do have it. So I'm going to dump. If I hit D, I've got my my black and white. That's the default colors. I just want this to be somewhat gray. We're going to work completely in grayscale. So I just dumped that, but I still have these dancing ants there. That I can see that that's selected. So I'm going to hit Command D to deselect, Control D on a PC. And then I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm going to keep kind of aiming at making this sort of stuff. I'm going to make this one in the rule of thirds. So I'm going to hit B for brush, and I'm going to use this hard pressure round brush. So that will be in your general brushes. I might have more brushes than you do, but you should have this one available to you. And basically we're just going to draw these. I'm just going to kind of like roughly draw in the rule of thirds. And then that idea is that you're going to put the things that you need over there. I'm going to undo that a couple times because I want to zoom out and really get this more correct. So B for brush, be a little bit more accurate. It doesn't have to be totally accurate, but we do want to get a sense of it. So I'm going to Command T that, which is transform, and that's really where I would like that rule of thirds to go. I can hit Command to transform that, and you'll use this transform tool a lot also. So I'm going to name this by double-clicking rule of thirds, and I'm going to lock that layer so I don't get onto it. Now I can make a lot of layers. This one I want to make mid-ground, so I'm going to double-click and call it mid-ground. This one was my front, so I'm going to call it front. Okay, so now I can do things like use the other lasso tool, which is the cowboy lasso tool, as I call it, to kind of create a path. And if you are snapping to this, that means that you have snap on, and I'll show you guys how to get rid of that now. You're going to go up to View, and if you have snap checked, you want that unchecked. Snap to will have all these little things, but you're going to uncheck that, make sure that's unchecked for this particular thing that we're doing. And so I'm going to hit G, but I don't want it to be the same color, and I also want it to be on the different layer and behind. So I'm going to keep going lighter and lighter as I go back in space. So Command D, so that's kind of starting to get there. Then I'm going to hit L for lasso again. I'm going to kind of create like a set of stuff behind here. That is an understanding of depth on the mountain. So I'm going to kind of make this a little bit lighter. I'm going to hit G. And if I have, you see how it just popped right next to it? So that's the way that I want it, Command D. Now I'm going to hit L for lasso again. And this one I'm going to have to go a little bit lighter, so it goes forward in space. I'm going to click here and get this to be a little bit lighter, G. Command D for deselecting. Now lasso, and grab this, and G, and I'm just going to have this one go a little bit lighter than that. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is make a new layer, and lasso, and this is where my little house is going to go. And it's going to be a house that's way crazy on a stilt, which I'm not going to be able to get all of that stilts in there right now, but I can get that kind of general shape. So I really want more like 3 more stilts. So I'm going to hit Shift, which gives me a little plus on my lasso. And I'm going to grab another stilt, and then another Shift, and then I'm grabbing that little stilt right there. So now when I hit G, I am going to hit a little bit lighter. And this is a house that's going to be on a new layer. I'm dumping, naming, house. It's okay if things get named wrong in my file a little bit. So Command D to deselect. I'm going to turn this layer off. But basically I've got it set up right. I'm going to turn the guides off right now. Command H. If it says hide extras, you're going to make sure it says hide extras, not hide Photoshop, and then you'll get it right. So right above that, at this point, I want to have a little bit of a darker background. So G, a little bit darker than white, because I might want some white to go in the foreground. So there we go. Zoom into that a little bit. So this is kind of my start. Now let's say I want to do some alterations, like this shape, I would like to change it. So Command T. You can hold down Command on this stuff to get different kinds of shapes to it, okay? And that alters shapes. And I can add to that a little bit more. So I'm going to hit I to pick this color, and G to dump it. And don't worry too much about that stuff. You can actually just click one more time to get it out of it. So that's coming pretty cool. And this is really meant to be super rough, so I'm pretty close to where I want to go. Let me zoom, actually hit F for full screen a couple times to show you the other kind of sketches that were kind of at that stage, right? So this just took that a little bit further. And this one also goes into gradation, so that's probably the next thing that I want to show you guys, Command H. Is how to get into gradations with a piece. So I'll do it with this piece. So I'm going to turn these Fibonacci sequences off, Command H to hide them, and then I'm going to kind of click onto these layers and make selections for the gradations that I want. So by the way, these are at a little bit of a lower opacity. I can see that it was actually the fills that were at lower opacity when I made them. But this is what I want to do. I'm going to You can do things like hit Command, click, and now you can see that I've selected like this ship that's floating and this shape. But I do know that these two things are separate, so I want to Command D that. And so what I would recommend instead is if you've got multiple things on one layer, to hit the W tool, which is the magic wand tool. You'll want it to be the one that is just called magic wand instead of the quick select tool. And to kind of go for certain shapes. Like this one, I have more than one shape, more than one tone on that, and I don't want this dark tone to be a part of it. So what I'm going to do is take my tolerance down to like maybe 5, and then try to do that. So Command D, and then use the magic wand tool. And now I have just that stuff, so I think that's going to be good. Command H to hide the dancing ants, and then I'm going to hit the gradient tool, and it will use these colors that are in the color box, the foreground and background color. So Command Z. The bigger that I go, the more white will push off into the back. So it's kind of what's happening as it goes to there. So that's me kind of pushing the gradients into it. Let's say for this piece, so I can hit Command D to deselect, W to select this shape and this shape. If I wanted to make these darker or lighter, another thing that I can do, I'm going to hit Command U and then go to lighten or darken, right? And because we're trying to have better illusion of space, having things lighter in the background is a better approach. You can hit preview to see the difference and go for that. So that's doing a little bit more selecting. I have to try to get some more gradients involved in this. This shape that's right here is actually the background shape, so I want to make another shape that is actually a shape. So I'm going to lasso this. It's kind of like the sky part. I'm going to click this. It's just pure white, and G. You can, even before you have shapes in there of any color, you can do the gradient tool. So I want this one to be kind of mid-gray to white, and I'm just going to grab in. And now I'm starting to get some tonation to it. Like that went too far. My first one was pretty good. I like that. This goes this way. If you go and take it this way, it's going to be totally wrong. So it's just about kind of knowing which direction that you want to get that to go. You can see that where I lay this first gradient, it's actually the foreground color in my dumper, and then where I stop this one is where the background color is going to be. So that's coming pretty nice, and is doing the kind of composition that I'm liking. So you just kind of keep moving around in that direction, making shapes and making gradients. It doesn't have to be super precise. It's really more of a thumbnail that we're looking for right now. Using gradients and the selection tool. This is ultimately where we're heading, where we have our thumbnails, and we end up drawing over, maybe putting texture over, using perspective tools to draw, and continue to paint. So this one, actually, when I did my thumbnails here, I duplicated this and did more drawing on it from here. So that's just something to consider. The benchmarks are really important as you continue to draw and get more information. So those are things to look at. Okay, thanks for watching, and have fun with your selections. Okay, this is Susan Bonner, and I'm out.